Good evening, everyone, or good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you're joining us from. It is your girl, Marcie Thomas, and I am super happy to be here with you again for another episode of Live Well, Sister. So please come on in the room and get ready for a great conversation about our style and how we show up in the world and all of that. So I was thinking as that last little one popped up that said living with joy. I'm like, well, tonight we're talking about living with style. How about that? So that's what we do as beautiful Black people. So please come on in the room, as I said, and get ready for what's going to be a great conversation. I am coming to you from the outskirts of Savannah, Georgia this week, normally coming to you from Atlanta, but either way it goes, it's just an honor to be here with you as always and be able to celebrate wonderful Black women authors. And tonight's guest is no exception. I'm going to just tell you up front, I'm going to give you the highlight right up front. This is a 2025 NAACP Image Award nominated author and book. So I am really glad to have her here with us, and she's getting a lot of buzz for her book, and once we get into it you will understand why. So tonight we are going to be talking about Afrocentric Style, a celebration of Blackness and identity in pop culture. And of course this is timely because we are coming up on Black History Month, and it's still going to be Black History Month and Black History Year, as we love to say around here. Now, Shirley Neal is a journalist, author, and documentarian whose works mainly focus on pop culture, Africa, and Black identity. Her cover story for Forbes Africa, highlighting Oprah Winfrey's works in South Africa, is among the franchise's most in-demand issues. Shirley has served as a contributing writer and an editor for Ebony. She graduated from Boston University with a BA in Liberal Studies and earned her professional certification as a literary ghostwriter from California State University, Long Beach. She lives in Los Angeles, and I found out in reading her book, she and I are from the same hometown of Cleveland, Ohio, originally. So without any further delay, let's welcome Shirley Neal to Live Well, Sister. Welcome, Shirley.
Hi, Marcie. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I am really happy to have you here. You know, number one, you're a homegirl, so that's always a good thing to have. Cleveland rocks. Cleveland doesn't always get the shine that it deserves, but there are a lot of great things and people that come out of Cleveland. I just have to say that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, as we were coming on, you have been nominated for NAACP Image Award for outstanding literary work by a debut author. So congratulations. And
thank you.
You're here.
I am real excited about that. This is my third NAACP nomination that I've gotten in my career, but this one is so important because it's for literature. Yes. And this is kind of like my new path. So I am just really excited about it.
Yes, and that's a pretty big deal as a debut author. So
yeah. And it's outstanding literary work by a debut author. So I feel really good. I've been ghostwriting for, as you mentioned, for about 6 or 7 years. So I've been writing for other people there are authors who are notable and know how to write, but they just don't have time. So this is my first one, my first book with just my name, my sole credit.
Yeah.
So that makes it really special for me.
Yes, and a beautiful book that it is. We're going to get into it, and you guys, you can see all these tabs that I have. So that's because there's so much rich history in here, beautiful photos. I'll show you a few as we go and have this conversation. So yes, it is very noteworthy, and I'm so proud of and happy for you with that nomination. So, of course, in telling a little bit about your story, Shirley, it's, you like to talk about pop culture, Africa, Black identity. What was it specifically that made you want to do a book about our style?
Well, it started out as something else. I spent a lot of time in Africa and a lot of travel time in Africa. I helped to launch the Africa Channel cable network. And even before then, I was traveling to Africa just for pleasure. I was just interested. I started there in 2000. My sister had a tour group going there, and I tagged along. And ever since then, I fell in love with the continent. So I was just interested in infusing my home with African art and African design. And when I started the Africa Channel, part of my job was to travel to Africa. I oversaw an office in South Africa. So I was there. I probably made about 50 trips in within a 2-year period, just working for the network. And so I had decided that, and even before then, I was really bringing home all kinds of artifacts. And so I decided to pitch a show 2 years ago. I had pitched a show to TV1 called Living with Soul that I produced for a season. And it was about infusing your home with African design.
I remember that. I love TV1. So yes, I remember that.
Great. Well, after I left the Africa Channel, I decided I love that show so much. I still love Africa. I'm still going to Africa. Why don't I write a book about infusing your home design with African culture? So that's what the book ended up being, and what I was started out being to be. And what I was going to do was kind of weave my story. I had spent so much time there and had so many different adventures on the continent. So I thought, why don't I have a book not just about design, but also about my adventures? So when my agent pitched it, she got a lot of feedback about, we love your stories, we love this, we love that, but maybe not do the design. What else would you cover? And so it kind of morphed itself into, what else are you really interested in? And pop culture has been something that I've just really enjoyed. And I love storytelling, and I love fashion and design and history and Black identity. I work closely with AfricanAncestry.com. And they're all about Black identity. So I said, why don't I take everything that I'm interested in and create this book about how pop culture is this conduit to help us better understand Black history and culture. So it kind of morphed into this.
And I'm happy that it did, because I love this book. As you've already seen all the tabs, but what I like about it, and I'm going to try to show some pictures and just things like that, like this Tyson. And when my mom opened it, that was where she wound up. That's picture Ava DuVernay. There's just so much, Questlove with his pick in his hair, all these beautiful, number one, the photographs. But then what I love about it is that you are telling stories. And you are sharing history.
Yeah. One of the things I tell people, and I mentioned it in the introduction, and I'm constantly telling people who have purchased the book, the pictures are there to bring you in, to draw you in. I was very careful and very meticulous in my selection, but it's really the stories that I want you to read. Don't just kind of thumb through and look at the pictures and close it and put it on the coffee table. Really read it. There's a lot of thought-provoking commentary in there that takes you back. There's some things that you probably forgot. There's some things you didn't know. There's some things that are all related to either our history or culture that's worth sharing. So it's really about the stories in there.
It really is. And I found myself really resonating with the stories of learning, I like the fact that, yes, it is about style, whether it's, how we adorn ourselves with our clothing or our hair and things like that. But then there's just also the history oftentimes that plays into how we might show up. And, you talk about music and all these different things. So obviously, in order for you to do that, you had to not only, look at your own experiences, but a lot of research went into it, I would venture to say.
Yeah, it was a lot of research. I spent about 2 years and mostly during COVID, kind of outlining the book and doing my research. I was homebound like a lot of people, so I had
Right.
plenty of time. The downside was that there weren't a lot of opportunities for me to get to libraries or to go and do my
Mm,
interviews and whatnot because everything was on lockdown. So I
mhm.
really did draw a lot from what I had learned and what I knew. And that's kind of where I started. What were the stories that I knew? And then I was able to do the research a little further. But it was pretty intensive research to get this.
And it definitely shows. So there are 9 chapters in the book, and of course, here we're not going to go through all of it. And this is not like a story where we're going to necessarily spoil things,
Mhm.
but I do want to just kind of give people an opportunity to know what they're in for, or what treats they're in for when they dive into this book. So you start out in the first chapter talking about wearing the movement. So tell us a little bit about what you mean by wearing the movement.
Well, one of the things that I noticed, mostly during the George Floyd era, is that people were starting to look back to what people were wearing in the 60s and the 70s that really spoke to how they were feeling or what they were going through at any particular time. So I decided that I wanted to research that and dig a little deeper, look at our pop culture moments and see that what you're showing right now is a perfect example. I start the book off looking at Beyonce and her appearance at the Super Bowl 50 and how she was dressed like Michael Jackson.
Mhm.
Everyone knew that Michael Jackson was a fan of hers. So I show her dressed very much like him when he was in the Super Bowl. But then
Mhm.
as you continue to read, you'll find out that's not really why she dressed that way. It was during an era when a lot of black men were a lot of unarmed black men were being killed by white police, and there was just an uproar. And so this was really her way to kind of speak her piece about what was going on. So this leads me into Black Panthers, into a lot of other stories about why we even wear the movement. People were starting to wear black berets and black jackets,
Mhm.
young people who thought it was just style, but it was really more than style. And I wanted people to really understand that a lot of the pop culture images that we see out there, there's stories behind them that are very, very rich, that are basically attached to our identity. And don't just wear something, know why you're wearing it,
Right.
understand that there's a history behind it. So that particular chapter really deals with over from the as far back as the 60s to today, why we wear our messages in our clothing. So
Mhm.
it's a pretty powerful chapter.
It is. It is. Just diving into, because yes, like a lot of people, we think that thought that what Beyonce was where it was paying homage to Michael Jackson. Now, of course, the women with the berets, that kind of gave away a little bit of Black Panther. But I love the fact that the Black Panthers, I should say, but I love that you kind of dove into that, and even the history of how they started dressing in that manner. So, because a lot of times we don't know, we just see these iconic photographs or whatever, and we don't know why they were doing it. I mean, okay, wearing black, but why the black jackets, why the black hats, all these sorts of black berets,
Right.
those sorts of things.
Right.
So
Why did we start doing the fist?
there
A lot of
was,
people
yeah,
don't know that. Why did that represent something? So I really dig deep into a lot of this imagery that we're used to seeing, but it's interesting to find out the origins of them. When we see Martin Luther King in marching,
yes,
why did they wear what they wore? Why were they wearing suits and ties and whatnot? Just really kind of covering the messages behind fashion, and even in sports, why you see off screen, I mean off court, you see athletes wearing one thing and then they weren't allowed to speak their piece, and then sometimes they were, and why they made their choices, and they spoke through their clothing. And I had so much that I could put in that chapter that just got on the cutting room floor, because there's really a lot that's connected to Black history through pop culture as far as our fashion's concerned.
Yes, and thinking like about Trayvon Martin, who, with the
The
hoodie,
hood.
it takes the hood
To
to
save
save
the
the
hood.
hood. Yes. Things like that. And it's true, because I mean, I'm not going to show you all the pictures because you got to buy the book.
That's
But
right.
but just thinking of the symbolism of people wearing hoodies, and like you talk about how people responded once what happened, the tragedy with Trayvon, and how people may have responded by wearing hoodies, or showing up in places wearing hoodies and things of that nature. So that you might just think, we're just mimicking what other people are doing, but there is some symbolism behind all of that.
Exactly. And even when you look at the hoodies, I mean, this was something that even got President Obama to speak out. And he was very careful about not speaking out on things of pop culture, if you will. But this was something that even moved him enough. And that's in the book. So I want people to really get an appreciation for the link between the Blackness and pop culture.
Yes, yes. And I do have to talk about, because you already talked about it a little bit, the whole thing of how Martin Luther King and people like John Lewis and all that, how they dressed, and dressing what we call our Sunday best sort of things.
Yes.
Not even the strategy behind that. And a lot of people may say that it's just tied to, what are we trying to say? What's the term that they use for it? Where you're trying to look acceptable.
Respectability fashion.
Yes, thank you. But that's not necessarily the only reason why they were dressing that way.
Exactly. And that term, respectability fashion, meant something then, and it means something different now, because it gets a lot of that phrase gets a lot of pushback now from a new generation. But I want you to understand how the origins of that term, and what it really represented. So there's a lot to learn there.
There's definitely a lot to learn. And then I'm not going to show the picture on this one, but you all got to get it and read it. But even that iconic photo of the three gentlemen at the Olympics, where two had their fists held high, the story behind that. And it's more than just the fist. Things that I didn't notice before that you dive into.
Okay, good. That's what I want. I mentioned in my introduction, I want people to say, I didn't know that. You think you know everything about some of these images, and I want people to find out that there's something beneath what they know, and to say, wow, that's new. I didn't know it. Or that's interesting, or I want to share that. That's exactly what I want to get out of this.
Yes. And yes, there's so much more, because you talk about all these historical things, but then even in, modern times, how people have adorned themselves to show up and have a statement in something that they're wearing. So it's just really powerful to see that, and to learn, and to understand, and really think more about the choices that we make. Because I mean, today this was a choice. You know what I mean? I wanted to show up in a certain way, and
it's beautiful, and it's African. From what I can see, that's an African mudcloth pattern. It looks like.
Yes, and it's like I wanted to show up in that way, or wearing my hair up versus wearing it down, or the earrings and things like that. And sometimes it's just because that's what you want to wear on a given day. But sometimes it is a statement that you want to make.
Absolutely. And with the African fashion that you're wearing, even one of my chapters even looks at it as being fabrics of pride, African pride. So I do a whole chapter on just kente cloth and African patterns and what they mean, and how we've used them in pop culture to draw attention and to make statements. So that's another strong chapter where I think there's a lot to learn there. We're not just wearing the fabric; it has a meaning.
Yes, yes. And and the fact that different, designs or different colors mean certain things, and how, maybe a person of a certain level of authority or privilege or royalty in many cases
Yes.
that were wearing the fabrics. And then also how it's shifted over the years, because I will admit in the early days, maybe 30, 40 years ago, if I got something African, it might be, look more quote unquote what we think traditional African clothing looks like, and maybe the fabric might have felt a little stiff or whatever the case may be back in the day. But now it's different. You can find Afrocentric clothing and garb that's got stretchy fabrics and and modern looking designs and all that. So it is something that has evolved.
It really has. And our appreciation for it, there was a time when we only saw it on Black History Month.
Right.
And now there's an appreciation for it, and it's being there's different types, as you said, there's different types of fabric. I mentioned in the book that it's so popular now that a lot of people reject the original cloth because it's so harsh and coarse, and they want the synthetic, and they want the dyed, and so it's really changed now. I raise the question: does that make it, if it's not as authentic, does that make it still hold the same sense of identity that it did? So I raise a lot of questions like that, just to evoke some conversation.
Right, like I'm looking at this now. This is definitely Amanda Gorman. It's a traditional looking fabric and all of that, and just the way she's wearing it is so beautiful to see
beautiful.
that.
And it speaks to the designer who created that, Virgil Abloh. It speaks to what he was all about, and I cover him in the book as well.
You do.
And he was really about showing that there's more to just fabric. There's stories behind why we wear what we wear, and what it has to do with our Blackness and our identity. And he specifically wanted that for her because he wanted it to be very regal. And he was looking for something that also told a story. Now you'll have to read the book to figure out what that story is. But everything was intentional. With his designs, and with a lot of these designers who I profile in here with their works.
Yeah.
And it was always about our culture and our identity, not just for here's something that's pretty.
Yes. I love that picture right there. Just the sisters hanging out.
Yes, yes.
And this one on this side, the team showing up. The whole team is dressed in the kente. That's just so powerful to see.
Yes. Now you're going to have to be careful with how many pictures you show.
Oh yeah, I'm not. That's what I'm not showing them all. Just enough to give people a tease.
Whet the appetite. Okay.
Whet the appetite to know what's in here. But while we're on the subject of talking about the cloth and things like that, you also don't shy away from sometimes the ways where it might be controversial, where maybe others are wearing things, and whether are they appropriating or celebrating and things like that. So just talk a little bit about why you chose to include that aspect in the book.
Yeah, I do that in a couple of areas. I do it when I speak about the African fabric. I do it when I speak about hair. But I want to raise the questions. I want discussion. We can say that a lot of our things are being misappropriated, but then on the other hand, haven't we also borrowed other styles from other cultures? And so I raise these questions so that we can actually have a dialogue and really look at it in a different way. I mean, it's so easy to say, this is our style. Why are they wearing it?
Right.
And sometimes it's political. And one of the pictures that I show in there that I think you're referring to, it really does. It's with the kente cloth and how it's being worn. And there are two sides to that discussion. I mean, is this appropriate? Is this paying homage? Or is this just pretty much exploiting Black identity? So I do that a lot. And I do that because I really want everyone to be able to take a moment and think about what pop culture does for us in terms of helping us explore our identity. And it's really good. It's been really, really effective in schools. I've been doing some speaking
Okay.
in some colleges, and that's a good talking point for them because I'm raising some issues that you don't generally think about. I mean, it's easy to kind of point a finger, but when you look at both sides, a lot of people who have the book have told me, I've had the book, it was released in November 26th. A lot of people pre-ordered it. They bought it right when it came on the shelves, but they still haven't gone through it because they're taking their time and they're reading and they're stopping and they're pausing and they're having discussions about some of these issues that I raise. So I love that. That's what this is all about.
Yes, and that's why you say it's not just a pretty book to throw on, on a coffee table. It really is something to dive into, and I can attest to that because, as I said, I was learning a lot along the way, not just because I wanted to have this conversation, but also I just want to know because our style is a really integral part of who we are. And especially right now when there are so many attacks on our personhood and on, just things about us and our history and all of these things are, these types of books are so important for us to not only learn, but also to feel a certain sense of pride in who we are and how we, can choose to show up in the world.
Exactly. And I think having so many photos, there's over 100 of them. And I think having so many photos makes it less intimidating for someone who's not an avid reader. A number of people who have the book say, I don't usually read books, but I'm reading your book. The pictures grab you, and then they lead you to want to read a little bit more. So yeah, I'm loving that.
Yes, it's good. So, your work is not in vain. Definitely not. Before we move into talking a little bit about hair, I do want to talk about hip hop and high fashion because that has been a big thing. We've seen it, and there's been ups and downs with that, even in terms of how Black artists, especially in hip hop, have been perceived, whether, this high consumerism with wearing all these fancy designs and maybe at different points in time us not being even thought of being good models for wearing the clothing. So just talk a little bit about what we can find in that particular portion.
Well, what I've done is I've presented some profiles on some designers who we may not have gotten a lot of play. We know of them. We've heard their names. We've heard of Virgil Abloh. We've heard of Pharrell Williams. But how much have we heard about Patrick Kelly? We may know a little bit of something about Dapper Dan. So what I do is I cover these incredible creative artists who have had a lot of influence in hip hop culture. And I chose these people specifically because they're more than just creating fashions, and they're more than just trying to dress our hip hop artists. They're about also sending messages about our culture and about Black history. So when you read about these artists, you read about who they're connected to in the hip hop world, but you also read about, you learn something about Black history and a lot about our culture. I know I sound like a broken record, but that's what this is all about.
That's what it's all about.
There's one chapter that also deals a little bit with hip hop, but it deals with another designer, young designer, Kirby John Raymond, who has his Pierre Moss. And I picked him because he's a runway artist, but he has the most incredible runway shows that deal all about race, but race in a positive way in terms of educating people about our culture. It's controversial in many ways, but he teaches us through his fashions. And that's something that's also very, very exciting to me. And I devote a whole chapter just to
Yes. And I really enjoyed that chapter. But in light of, we're not going to show you everything. You all have to get the book to really see it. But I will say that in that particular chapter, I like the fact that you talk, I'll share this much, is that you talk about, like the cowboy culture before Beyonce and what she has done, and how this particular designer has paid homage to the cowboy culture and things like that. So yes, it might be new to some people, but we know that it's a part of our history, and there have been many who have celebrated it along the way.
Yes, exactly. So that's actually one of my favorite chapters. I love them all. You can't pick a favorite child, but
Right, exactly.
that's a very enlightening one, because a lot of people knew very little about him and learned so much just through fashion.
Yes, I love that. So, even though the book isn't broken up in sections, it kind of sort of is, because the first part is a lot about fashion and clothing and how we adorn ourselves, and then there are 3 chapters that you really dive into things about our hair and different aspects of Black hair, starting out with Black hair love, and what does it mean to love our hair.
And what I do with that is I make it interesting for, well, the whole book is interesting for a wide demographic, but hair love specifically, I want young kids to also appreciate that chapter. So I have a lot of references to young people, through our literature, through our music, and how they can come to appreciate and love their hair. I did that intentionally because so many young Black kids or any kids of color they're bullied in school, and a lot of times it's because of their hair. And so I write this intentionally to give them an appreciation for our hair, however you wear it. And I use a lot of examples from TV and from literature to kind of make the point. And it's also for all of us, so that you can get us. We're going through a place again with respectability fashion, as it's talked about now, where you're being told how you can wear your hair if you're a newscaster or if you're showing up at your job. And so that's why it got a negative connotation now for a new generation. But what I do is I cover how we've evolved over time and what the Crown Act has done, but to kind of give us perspective, so we can appreciate our hair and any style.
In any style.
In any style. It doesn't have to be just a natural style, which a lot of people think when we're talking about going back to our roots or hair love, that it has to be, we're going back into the natural movement. I happen to like to wear my hair oftentimes straight, but does that make me a sellout? So I raise a lot of questions and a lot of interesting topics related to our hair love, the myths about our hair, the controversies about our hair. And I kind of cover every hairstyle: afro, straight, locks, bald, shaved, you name it.
Yeah, I love this particular photo, talking about youth. I
Yes,
love that photo. Right.
Nothing says hair love more than that.
And more than that. That's
More than
right.
that.
That's right. We have a comment actually from one of my good friends. I love that the book was also written with youth in mind. Sounds like a great gift idea. It is. It is.
It is, and it absolutely is for all ages. A lot publishers hate to hear you say that when you're pitching the book, and they ask you, like, who's your demo? And they said no book is for everybody. Well, this is one book that really is, because it really does reach a wide audience. And I was honored. I heard that even at my church, the young people want to use this book to make their presentations for Black History Month. So it's young people, and then the older people want to do the same thing. So it really does reach a wide audience.
Yes, it does. And I really, it is talking about culture through style. So I like the intention that you put into including, films, books, things, television shows, and all of that, music, whatever, because things about our style and our fashion and our swag and our hair, it shows up in all of those places. And
Right.
it's important for us to be able to celebrate ourselves and, and say, hey, I am not my hair, whatever the case may be.
Exactly.
It's important for
Exactly.
us to do that.
Yeah. And, I even questioned the title of the book. I didn't want style to have people think it was just fashion and hair, and beauty, which is why, if you'll notice, the subtitle
Mhm.
leads, it's at the very top. This is really
Yeah.
more about a celebration of Blackness and identity and
Mhm.
pop culture. The style comes later. I didn't want to scare away men who might think, oh, it's
Right.
just a book about fashion. It's just a book about hair. No, this is a book about style as it refers to us as a people. And
Mhm.
I really wanted that subtitle to really jump at you.
Mhm.
That it's really a celebration of that too.
It is. And, for those who are watching, because we get some men that watch at different times, men are featured in the book heavily. So don't think you're going to pick it up like Shirley said, that it's just going to be a bunch of, women in makeup and, and all that kind of stuff. This is not what that is, but of course, we, both genders are, featured in the book. So from that perspective, but yes, there is a lot, like, some of the designers and, the hip hop chapter talks a lot about, males who are involved in, creating culture through fashion. So yes, it's for everybody. It's for everybody.
And that was definitely intentional.
That, yes, and it's nice. And I just have to do this because I am a doll person. So yes, I was excited to see the Barbies in here. That's one of the vintage Barbies that's in here. And many of you may have had a chance to see the Black Barbie documentary. So, and you mentioned that in the book as well.
And I try to do that as often as I can. I wrote the book over a period of time, but with editing and whatnot, I was able to update certain areas. And if there was something that I could reference, like the Barbie documentary, when I'm writing about Barbie, I did that because I don't want you to just stop here. I give little tidbits of information and I want you to feel like you'd like to explore it. So I do mention that. And that's an incredible documentary from Shonda Rhimes that really gives you even a greater history about
Yes.
the Barbies. Yeah.
And I just had to show, this is the one I told you I'm not at my house right now, but I have her. That's the one I was telling you I have. Yes. So, and some of the others that were patterned after some of our great icons as well. So I love that you can.
Collector's items.
Yes, they are still in boxes. They are not to be played with or toyed with.
Treasure those. Treasure
Yes,
those.
yes, and I'm hoping I can get a hand on the new Aaliyah one that just came out. So, but yes, it's just good to see that, and it also just speaks to the fact that we do show up in culture a lot of different ways.
And
So,
even when you look at the dolls, there was a time, and I mentioned in here where we had the first Black Barbie. And if you look today, how many iterations of Black Barbie we have now? And I mean, it's worth celebrating. And there's a reason why it's that way. And I mentioned that in the book, and constantly, it seems like within every quarter you're hearing about a new Black Barbie that's coming out, and I think it's something worth celebrating. But it's good to understand how we got started.
yes,
And that's why you read the book and you have
that's
a better appreciation for it.
yes, and my prayer is, I have to go here, but my prayer is that we can continue to see these things happening and that more of us can be involved in the process of bringing things that represent us to fruition in the times that we are in right now. You have
Absolutely.
to talk about what's real. And so it's important that everyone is still able to be represented. So I'm praying that we can continue to advocate for that to happen.
Absolutely. Yes.
And what's going on. So yes, we talk about all that in that particular chapter. Then we talk about being nappily ever after, which gets into some of the things of what people have to say about nappy and what it means to be nappy.
Yeah. And it's interesting, as I was doing writing this book, my sister said, don't use that. That's a negative term. I'd redo that. And the reason I stuck with it, There was the film Napoli Ever After, and I love the title for the same reason I used it in this book. I want to show that there are happy endings to our story. And so for every example that I give in the Napoli Ever After, it's a controversy. It's something that started out bad, and as the phrase goes, what God meant, someone meant for bad, God meant for good. Same thing here. Whatever someone in pop culture history meant for bad, there's a good, happy ending to it. So that's why this chapter is called that. And I've gotten a lot of good, positive feedback from that, because it shows that there's always a happy ending and a reason to be celebrating our hair, no matter what anybody says.
No matter what anybody says. And, you know, and we're so grateful to the originators and people who are promoting the Crown Act, so that we can have more opportunities to be in spaces where we can do what we want to do. You know, I can wear my hair like this, or, you know, I can straighten it, or whatever I want to do. And because for me, as I think about style, I really think about being able to show up as my authentic self.
That's it. That's what it's all about. Yeah, it really is. I write in one of my chapters a personal experience where I was with an entertainer, and you'll have to read the book to find out who it was, who would not take pictures with women who wore weaves because he felt that that was a sellout. And that we should all wear our hair natural. And so when I did the interview with him, my hair was straight, and he assumed I had a weave. And so he asked me, right, you know, point blank, is that a weave? And I refused to answer. And he ended up taking the picture, but he put someone in between us because he really didn't want to take a picture with me in case I was wearing a weave. So he just, you know, he just had this issue. And so I like to spend time to talk about our natural self. If you want to wear a weave, wear the weave. If you want to wear it straight, wear it straight. If you want to wear it natural, wear it natural. But I give background for each way you choose to wear your hair, so that you're not just doing it just for style's sake. You're doing it for culture's sake, and you know and you know why. You know the roots of it.
And you know literally and figuratively,
yeah.
you know the roots of it. Yes. And then of course there, you know, and there's another chapter, Afro's Attitudes and Other Main Attractions, where you do kind of get into the different ways that we wear our hair, and we see icons like, you know, Angela Davis and, you know, others, James Brown, you know, just a bunch of people who were rocking their fros, you know. Well, I am going to show this because I just love this picture of her, Diana Ross, with a big old fro. Because we're,
and you know, one of the reasons I did that is, you know, Diana Ross, as when she was a Supreme, they were all about wearing wigs.
Yes.
And so I think when she was photographed with the big afro, that was just iconic. Yes. And I talk about how that came to be. And even you mentioned James Brown, you know, we know James Brown with his processed hair, and that was his look, that was his style. But then there was a point in his career where he decided, I'm going to wear an afro, and there was a reason behind it. And so I think it was worth sharing. You know, why was he wearing it, and why did he go back to wearing the process? It wasn't just for style, it was for culture's sake.
Yes, say it loud. I'm Black and I'm proud.
There you go.
Yes, I love that. But and you know, I don't mind telling my age. I am a child. I was born in the late 60s, coming up in the 70s. So yes, watching Soul Train and seeing all the young people with their big afros and their bell bottoms and their platform shoes. Yes, it's just something. And the dashikis, you do talk about dashikis in here as well, because that's a part of our, you know, cultural, you know, clothing and things like that. But that's what I grew up seeing. So
Soul Train.
Yes,
and the Afro Sheen commercials.
Yes, you do have an ad of that in here as well. But that's what I grew up as watching, or, you know, picking up an Ebony or an Essence back in those days, and seeing a lot of people with the afros and things like that. So when we as a culture started kind of leaning back in that natural side, I was like, oh, I'm with it, because that's what I started out seeing when I was growing up. So
well, you mentioned Ebony, and Ebony was actually it was very useful for me in researching this book, and so that was our that was kind of our Bible
yes.
for a lot of us growing up, and so I really relied on that a lot, and that is really part of our pop culture history that we can't ignore. So I just want to give a shout out to Ebony magazine, because they're still doing a lot for us in terms of having us celebrate who we are and our culture.
Yes, yeah, Ebony and Jet back in the day, and there was some
And Jet back in the day.
yeah,
That's
those
right.
are the mainstays. But yeah, just the afro. Yeah, thinking about Michael Jackson and Jackson 5, just all of that. Was a part of our history, and is a part, I should say, of our history and culture. Wherein maybe initially it was maybe so-called quote unquote militant people rocking the fro, but at a certain point, everybody was wearing afros.
Right, right. And I write about, Angela Davis was known for her fro, but there was a time when she didn't wear one, and got a lot of news. It was very newsworthy when she didn't. So I write about that in the book, and a lot of little tidbits like that that make you want to read.
Yes, and Jean is saying Ebony was on every coffee table. Absolutely, absolutely.
That was the go-to.
That was it. I wish I could find it, but there is actually a picture of my dad when I was a little girl. He was laying on the floor reading an Ebony magazine, and he had his afro. So I wish I had that picture, because that's just like classic. But yep, it was that, just that much a part of our culture and heritage. So I love that. But then, in addition to the afro, you talk about the dreadlocks or locks, and all of that, and how people have worn that. And now that's become a big part of what we see nowadays as well. People rocking locks as well.
Rocking locks and cutting off their locks, and
Yes.
what does that mean, and what does history say about that, and why did they do it? Everyone from Lenny Kravitz to Jaden Smith, and there's little stories behind why they chose to do that, and what it means when you cut black hair. What does it mean when you touch the myth about touching our black hair? So I cover a lot of that.
You do cover a lot of it. And then those who are rocking baldies as well, making that choice. In some cases it's
Exactly.
not a choice, and in some cases it is.
Right. And I cover both of those, whether you're shaving or you're going completely bald or you're just etching symbols into the hair. I talk about losing hair and how to express your identity through that. So no rock is unturned.
Yes. And y'all can't really see it, but I'm a combination, because I got this up here, but I do have an undercut. So yeah, I got some lines and stuff in mind. So I got the best of both worlds.
Sounds good.
Yes, that was a conscientious choice. At the end of the year, I said I'm going to do something different. So I'm getting an undercut, because I want to have something a little different. But all of that, again, it's like showing up as your authentic self, being able to express your style, and show up in a room looking the way you want to look when you show up in that room.
Right. And have pride in that. Just know that it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. If you have pride in that look, as we should have, then that's the way to go.
That's the way to go. That's the way to go. And last but not least, because I'm a combination, well, not necessarily last, but the braids and the beads. When I was growing up, there's a picture in my mom's house somewhere, me rocking the beads and all that, like we saw Venus and Serena do. So yeah, all of those things. I mean, we just got. One of the things I love about being Black, one of the many things I love about being Black, is the different options that we have.
That's it. That's it. And we have so many. And for many years, we didn't celebrate that. We were ashamed sometimes, whether we're talking our fashion or hair, whether we're talking beauty. That's the last section that we get into, whether it was our features. We didn't celebrate it. And now we celebrate these options, or at least we should.
We
And that's
should.
one thing that I try to really impart that message in the book.
And in this particular chapter, also the head wraps. So, like your Erykah Badu's and, people like that who are rocking Scully's or whatever the case may be, the elaborate head wraps. And even there's history behind the head wraps as well.
There is history behind the hair wraps in a lot of genres, even in sports. I talk about the head wraps, the do-rag, and I talk about the mammy head wraps that are also in film, and then the enslaved were forced to wear, and what we wear for style. So I kind of cover the gamut, and there's a history behind it, and there's a reason to really be proud of those options that we now have. They weren't always options.
Right, that's true.
And I do cover that. Yeah.
Yes, because and some people who are watching may already know, but once upon a time they didn't want our hair to be shown. They wanted our hair to be covered. So, but exactly. Us being us, we're like, okay, you want me to cover it up? I'm gonna show you what it looks like when I cover it up.
Or what I can do with it when I cover it.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm like, okay, I see you. But yes, and there's a chapter, or the next to last chapter, you talk about beauty queens and cover girls, and that is a lot about a lot of the young Black women who have had the opportunity to show up as beauty queens, or homecoming queens and all that sort of stuff throughout time, and of course, models and women that show up on covers of magazines.
Right. And I really go through a history of that and how we've evolved and celebrate where we've come. It was a really hard struggle for us to be, when we knew Black is beautiful, but the world didn't know for a long time that Black was beautiful. And it gives us an appreciation and a reason to celebrate what we look like and our beauties. And, we weren't always on mainstream magazine covers, and we certainly weren't always in beauty contests. But I kind of pretty much do a history trail for that. And that was even pretty eye-opening for me as I was doing some of the research. Yeah. So it's actually one of my favorite chapters.
What was one thing that shocked you in learning about Black women in beauty pageants?
Well, yeah, when I was a kid, I loved to watch beauty pageants, and it didn't bother me that I didn't see anyone on them that looked like me, because we weren't in a lot of places. So I didn't think anything of it, and I just liked looking at the beautiful women in the pageants. And as I started to do the research, I realized that Flo Kennedy is an activist who was really very instrumental in our being integrated into beauty pageants. So her whole story is pretty interesting. And Niecy Nash portrayed her.
Sure did.
Yeah, and I didn't know very much about her until I started researching this book. And her whole history is pretty fascinating. So I learned a little, and I had appreciation because, I had been following beauty pageants for forever. As I got older, I decided that wasn't my thing. I didn't believe that we needed to be, my whole ideals changed. And then what happens? I'm entered in a beauty pageant. So, who knew? So I kind of weave my story throughout there of how I evolved as well as the whole industry of beauty pageants evolved.
And that's something I do want to show these couple, because I remember Soul Train. I do remember watching like Miss Black America. So all of them got afros. I love it.
Right.
I love it. All of them are rocking a fro. But that was in 1969. Either a fro or it was, it was a pressing curl. Okay?
It was natural, yeah.
One or the other. And then I spoke of Essence. This is the first issue of Essence, she's clearly rocking a fro. So
Absolutely.
that's what I grew up. To me, that's what beauty looks like, because that's just what
Mhm.
I saw coming up. So I appreciate that you shared this. And then of course we go through, like the 80s. I remember when Vanessa Williams won, because that was the year I was getting ready to graduate from high school and stuff like that. So yeah, just really being able to see how things have evolved and changed over time. And
Mhm.
then last but not least in the book, and this is something that you don't shy away from, and I'm glad that you didn't shy away from it. And that's where you
Mhm.
talk about the whole concept of like our different shades. And
Shades and shapes of
shades
black.
and shapes, because
Mhm.
what does it mean to have style or to be considered beautiful or attractive at different shades, or our bodies are all different. So why was it important to include that in this particular?
I think mostly, again, thinking about young people, a lot of kids get bullied because of their shade or their shape of blackness. And I wanted to have something for them to look at
Mm-hmm.
and be proud of who they are. So I tell a lot of stories and of all generations. And one of the things that really led me to do it is the brown paper bag theory.
Mm-hmm.
And I came across that many years ago, where you hold the paper bag up to your face, and if you're that color or lighter, you were accepted, and if you weren't, then you're out.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I wanted to talk about that, and that led me to kind of covering other stories about our
Mhm.
shades and shapes, and
Mhm.
kind of put out there what reality has been,
Mhm.
and what it is now, so that we can really appreciate who we are. I talk about skin bleaching and
Mhm.
that whole trend. I talk about appropriating. I talk about our lips and our eyes and our hair and our butts, and I cover it all.
Yes.
Um, but I use pop culture to do it. I use literature and movies and music and everything I can, just to make the point that we are all uniquely different, and let's
Yes.
celebrate that.
Let's celebrate it. Let's celebrate. And I do appreciate that you included that, because I mean, even as we think about what makes our hair beautiful or what makes our clothing style, acceptable, all these different things, there are a lot of, what should I say, historical things that have tried to let us not celebrate ourselves. And it's might be easy to try to ignore that. Like a lot of other things, people don't want to think, oh, well, that doesn't apply. Like, yeah, a lot of those things still are happening. I have
Right.
seen stuff on social media about, the light skin party or the dark skin party, or, whatever the case may
Mhm.
be.
Mhm.
So there are people who are still holding on to some of those ideals. And it's important for us to be able to have a book like this and be able to
Mhm.
celebrate all of who we are, no matter how we
Exactly.
show up.
Right, right. Just kind of call out all of what's people are trying to shame us with. Just call it out and let's
Mm-hmm.
celebrate.
Mm-hmm. And that's what this book is. Hey, that was a good word. This book is a celebration of Blackness and identity in pop culture. See what we did there? Hey,
Brought it back.
we took it all the way back around. But it is a celebration, and we should always celebrate ourselves. And for those who can't, books like this will help you, because you can see yourself in it. And I
Mhm.
really love the fact that you do have things in here that young people could put this up and look at it and say, hey, maybe I need to think about that differently, or I'm learning something that helps me understand who I am, or that it's okay that I have these nice full lips and this wide nose, and this
Right.
hair that is not on it's not on a two, it's not a 2 on the 1 to 4 scale. You know what I mean? It might be
Right.
a 4C or 4D or 4E, but it's but it's
And the
all.
other thing, yeah, and the other thing is they're not just hearing this from me. These aren't just affirmations and facts that I'm giving them. I'm actually using pop culture, viral, trending images that they're used to seeing and I'm pulling from that what they need to know and appreciate and celebrate. So it's not just some older woman saying, you should appreciate you shouldn't be ashamed and you should wear your hair. It's, I'm using, I went where they go, they're on social media. A lot of these images that I picked, half of them are trending social media images. Half of them are historical images, iconic images, but you're really learning from pop culture.
Yes.
And I use that to get everyone's attention.
Yes, and you have done it so well. Paula says, thank you, Marcie and Shirley, for a very informative, interesting conversation. Yes,
Yeah,
it's been
thank
our
you,
pleasure
Paula.
to bring this to you. Yes, because Afrocentric Style, it's a beautiful book. It's wonderful history. It's timely, even though I know it's been out for a couple of months. It's timely as we're having this conversation, as we're preparing to enter into Black History Month. It's timely because of, ways that people are trying to diminish the things that make us a part of the culture or that showcase our style or our beauty. So this is an important work. And of course, when you started it, you didn't know any of these other things are going to be going on. So
no, and it's an evergreen book. I mean,
yes,
it's something you can pick up, I believe, 2 years from now, and it's still pretty relevant, and it's something that you can still use and learn from and appreciate.
I know I will continue to go back and forth to it. Just, sometimes you just need to look at beautiful, beautiful Black people doing what they do. So it's good for that. So of course, Shirley, as I mentioned at the top, if people joined us later on, the book is nominated for NAACP Image Award for Outstanding Literary Work by a Debut Author. So, we will be rooting for you because I know that's one of the ones that we can't vote for as a public.
Right.
But we will definitely be rooting for you in that. So are you excited about being able to go to the event and all of that?
I'm excited for this category. They're having a virtual, they reserve the broadcast. I believe it's February 22nd for the on-camera categories, and everything else they kind of put into a virtual. So yeah, I'm very excited, and I'm claiming it. I'm claiming victory.
Yes, we are claiming it with you and for you. So in the meantime, in between time, are there any places that you are going to be maybe doing book signings or, other conversations like this where people can, connect with you or learn more from you or maybe even come get a book signed or whatever the case may be?
Yes, actually, thank you for bringing that up. Just today, I sent out an e-blast to my mailing list. This weekend, I'm going to post it on social media, and everything is currently right now on the Afrocentricstyle.net website. You can see where book signings are scheduled and speaking engagements, but I'm going to post that on social media this weekend. Right now we have some signings, and I actually do presentations. So I'm showing things from the book, I'm talking about them, I'm giving you some extra information that's not in the book. Because I could only put so much in the book. Right. So I'm doing great presentations as well, and book signings right now in Los Angeles, Washington, D.C., Cleveland, Ohio. Can't ignore Cleveland, Las Vegas, and I'll soon be doing some in New York and Atlanta. So I'm just now kind of getting out there with the book tour, and it'll be a great opportunity to meet me, and I can meet those of you who love the book and sign them.
All right, that sounds good. And Rosie Lee, who is my friend, she's in Atlanta with me. So depending on where you are, I'm sure, we like to hang out and do stuff. So I'm sure we would come see you. So
okay, sounds
I'll
good.
Definitely stay tapped in, and hopefully, you can come out and be able to, see you and meet you in person, and like I said, get my book signed and
okay,
get Nick if you'll accept it, all those things. So, oh yeah, Rosie just said yes. that's my road dog right there. So yes. So
My
yes,
pleasure.
we would love to do that. So thank you again, Shirley. This has been such a pleasure. I did not show you all the pictures.
Yeah,
You
there's
all,
over 100 of them.
it's
So
over
we're
100. Yeah,
excited for it.
we will be here all night just showing pictures. But I definitely do suggest that you all grab a copy of this book and dive into not just the beautiful pictures, but the history and all of the things that are within. Because we only gave you a small snippet of what's inside of this gorgeous book. So thank you again, Shirley, for being here. I will
Thank
let
you.
you go ahead and get a sip of water, whatever the case may be. And I'm going to give just a couple quick announcements, but don't you hang up just yet. I'll see you in just.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. I've enjoyed it.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. Yes, I enjoy being able to talk to Shirley. As soon as I heard about this book, I was like, "Oh, I gotta have it," because I love reading about style, learning about style, history, all those sorts of things. I love celebrating us, in any and every way that's possible. So thank you again, Shirley, and good luck, and all that on the NAACP Image Award. But win or lose, you're a winner in BG and Brown Girl Collective's book. So we know that you're going to do well with that. So I'm going to have to look at my phone because since I am not at my house, I have to tell you who all is coming here next week. And so I got to actually look at my calendar to make sure I get it right. So on Monday evening, I will be talking to Amber O'Neill Johnston about her book Soul School, and it's really leading into Black History Month. It's a lot about books for Black children and how we can educate our children about history and things of that nature. So look for that on Monday, which is the 3rd, and then on the 5th, I will be talking to who am I talking to on the 5th? Oh, Jasmine Marie, who's going to be here to talk with us about Black Girls Breathing. So that's what's coming next week. And I will be putting those up here within the next day or so you can lock in and make sure that you put those particular events on your calendar. And I will be back in my normal spot next week. So you all wish me safe traveling mercies as I head back to the A. And I look forward to seeing you all next week. Please take good care and have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. Take care. Bye-bye.